Welcome to the Reality Revolution. This is one of the biggest days ever on the Reality Revolution podcast. I actually have Aaron Doughty, one of my favorite YouTubers, and there would not be a Reality Revolution podcast without Aaron Doughty. He inspired me. I've learned so much from his videos on so many different levels. I have manifested so many things by using Aaron Doughty's techniques, and many times I have been pondering about a specific issue. Aaron will have a video on it the very next day. Or even after I started my podcast, I would do a meditation, and the same day, Aaron has a meditation that's almost identical. We are on the same wavelength. I've been trying to interview him for 6 months, and finally he got stuck in his house. So he had no choice. So welcome to the Reality Revolution, Aaron.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate you having me on. Did you use outer intention, bro? Tell me.
I did, of course, but I reduced importance, so it's all good.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, I've been kind of on the sidelines watching you and what you're doing for the last. I think that you commented on one of my videos a long time ago, and I was like, oh yeah. Awesome podcast. I was actually I haven't told you this yet, but I was randomly listening to one of your podcast episodes on through iTunes. A long time ago, maybe it was 6 months, or I don't know. How long have you had the podcast now?
It's been almost a year now. So
yeah, so maybe a little over 6 months ago. And I was listening to an episode, and then you like shouted me out and said something about go check out Aaron's videos on this. And I was like, oh, cool. I was like, I saw the resonance there. So I love what you're doing. I think that you're awakening a lot of people. I think you have a very unique way of merging the parallel reality to law of attraction to some of the old school Neville Goddard. And I applaud you for what you're doing, because I think you're doing an amazing job at it, and you've got great energy too. So
oh man, thanks.
Cut you out as well.
No, when I got your comment, I was like, great on the. I spent that whole day just like, Aaron Doughty has listened to one of my episodes. I was like, it blew my mind. I as I mentioned before, I watched you from the very beginning. I remember the very beginning, for some reason, it just ended up on you had maybe 2 or 3 videos, and
wow.
You were sitting in the old apartment complex in front of the pool. I think you were still selling shoes at that time, right?
Yep.
But I could see the hope, the dream in your eyes, and you got more comfortable and you got better, and it became, I've grown with you every step of the way. Every video's gotten better.
Thank you.
And as I can tell you, by doing this, you learn as well. You're doing this and you're expanding your knowledge. Just this process of teaching ends up being a great way of learning about this stuff. And so 4 years,
100%.
4 years?
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. Time goes by so fast.
Wow. That is amazing. So when you first started, what was your goal at that time? What did you see yourself doing with this? Did you make it big, or was it a day by day thing? How did you?
So in the very beginning, when I was in high school, I was in forensics debate. So was I. I
was a college debater. So you were a debater too.
What did you debate? What kind of?
I was in cross-sex super fast debate, NDT debate. That was my.
That's hardcore, bro.
That was me, right? That's why I have a problem. I talk too fast.
I talk too fast too.
People continuously telling me I need to slow down and that's because way back then I was, as you know, there's very few people that know. In debate, there is a kind of debate where people talk lightning fast.
Right? We called it policy.
Policy debate was what I did. Yeah.
Oh, So I did Lincoln Douglas debate. So Lincoln Douglas debate is more moral debate. I know this.
But still, it's debate, and it's
still debate. Yeah, I love debate, man. When I would go to different tournaments and stuff, it's one of my I got in debate originally because I actually had a school project back in like freshman or sophomore year of high school, and I was part of a group, and I went up in front of the class and I completely froze. It was my freshman year.
Right.
And I completely froze, and I didn't remember what I was supposed to say. And there was this long, 20 seconds of silence. And it was so embarrassing that next year I said, okay, I'm going to break this fear. So I signed up for a forensics debate. And there was just something about it. The first couple tournaments, I was nervous. It was I wasn't doing that great, but then something clicked where I learned how to use my voice in a passionate way. I was in forensics. I was in band before I was in forensics debate, and in band.
So was I.
What did you play?
I played clarinet. So you
nice.
And,
I played trombone.
All right. Okay.
But you know how reading sheet music, there's like crescendos and then there's like decrescendos and then there's like staccato where words are very sharp. Well, I've always been fascinated with that. And when I learned debate, what I did and how to speak is I applied that process of band, of voice and different tonalities to forensics debate. And when I started to do that, I started to win like a lot. I started to go and, you got judges and stuff, and I started doing really well. And I became extraordinarily passionate about it. Also, I'm sure you maybe know some of my past where I had kind of control around me between 7 to 15 years old. So I got to debate when I was like 13, when I was like 14. Mm-hmm. So I became super obsessed with it because I had no other freedom. I wasn't allowed to have friends. I wasn't allowed to play outside. I was doing yard work, or I was like, so that became my creative outlet. So that was like one of my first loves. So just to kind of make a long story short, I've always known that once I did forensics debate, I was going to be a speaker one day. Yeah. I've always obviously been really inspired by Tony Robbins and people like that. And then what happened is I thought that meant I was going to be a lawyer. My dad wanted me to be a lawyer, and I did really well in school. So
did I. That's what I was.
That's funny, dude.
I have a law degree, so yeah.
Wow. Good for you, man. I can totally see that too.
But especially with policy. All of the thing about debate that's so amazing that I go back to is you're forced to argue things that you may not believe in. You have to also take the opposite perspective. You have to go outside of yourself and say,
I love that. That's exactly what I love too.
That is a huge learning experience people do not get unless they actually do debate.
Yep.
So there's a common brotherhood with debaters. When I meet a debater, I understand that it changes your thinking process.
Absolutely, 100%. A lot of what I teach now is that your beliefs create your reality. You change your beliefs, you change your life. And the one of the main things I learned from debate was, you go into a debate tournament, you have a topic. One of the topics, for example, was like juveniles charged with violent crime should be tried and punished as adults. Right. Well, you go into this debate, you might flip a coin to see who gets positive and negative. Exactly. You might be told you're going to be positive this one, and you'll go like 5 rounds during the day. So you'll debate 5 different people in front of judges and stuff. You might be negative, positive, negative, positive. Exactly. So you don't get to choose. So what I was able to learn is there were certain perspectives I had where I'd go in and I'd be like, oh, I'm obviously, like when I'd start researching something, I'm obviously affirmative on this. But then what would happen is I do the research. I'd be like, actually, I can see this other perspective. Exactly. And then I realize kind of like, I'm a huge Bashar fan, but like all truths are true. You'll find evidence for anything you look evidence for. Exactly. And when you're doing evidence and you're writing cases for these forensics debate tournaments, you then find evidence for whatever you're looking for. And it doesn't matter what you personally believe in. Because you're competing to get your point across. But it's funny because then you'll see your own mind change, because then you start to go outside of yourself. So So
you watch online, you watch people arguing issues, and you can tell they have not stepped outside of the argument and said, well, if this is what they think, this would be the response. And there is a completely different way of looking at things. It's true. Yeah. It's very different. So if people are watching this years later, we're doing this interview right now during the coronavirus. And so I was really excited to have Aaron on, because I personally believe that this is an inspiration, an instigator, a spark for a huge awakening. Somebody who's very empathic. I can feel it. I can feel it from the messages I'm getting, from what I'm seeing. It's like a forced desert period. Jesus had the period where he goes to the desert. Buddha, all of the great spiritual teachers have that period where they go and they're forced into, and we're being forced into our 40 days and 40 nights of solitude, right? So and what ultimately results in that is levels of awakening. I think I can feel it. It's a huge and exciting time. You talk a lot about 2012, and there was kind of this expectation that something was happening. We could feel it, and then there was kind of nothing really happened. But I kind of feel like that's what's happening now. And I had mentioned before this that this virus feels like it may have a mental aspect to it. That we're also, over this weekend, you might people that have not really dealt with the way their mind and body interact. They hear on TV, oh, this causes diarrhea, and then they have diarrhea, and like it has nothing to do with the virus. And I was also thinking, we got the keys to the car. Before we get the keys to the car, we need to learn how to drive it. It's pretty dangerous to drive. So we're being given this to show how powerful our minds are. Maybe that's just something that crossed my mind.
Yeah.
So as an expert in awakening, I wanted to get your perspective on it and see what
Yeah.
you're thinking about this.
Yeah, of course. So, so first off, let me say I made some videos on Instagram that I had no idea would get shared as many times as they did. And I talked about the coronavirus and, they got like 300,000 views, and some of them got shared like 20-something thousand times. And I was afraid to put those videos out because they were a little bit more edgy. And I say that not to make it sound cool or anything. I say that because like so many people shared some of the perspectives I'm about to share that there was maybe something that really resonated at a deep level. And now let me first off also preface this by saying, I believe that it is still it is a virus. We should still wash our hands and do all that stuff. Right. Like some people may have taken what I said out of context to say like, this isn't anything to even think about or worry about. Like, I'm not saying that.
Right.
What I am saying though, is I believe that yes, there's a virus component to this. I believe that in some ways it may be very overly hyped and exaggerated by the media, because the objective of the media many times, 99.9% of anything we've ever heard on the media has always been negative. And that keeps people within a certain bandwidth of information, a certain timeline, whatever we want to call it. There's a certain intention there that isn't maybe the most genuine or positive necessarily.
And maybe it's not an intention. Maybe it's just how they end up always just reporting the negative. It's not like some conspiracy, but that's just how it's built, right?
Could be.
Yeah.
Could be. I think that as well, though, on the other side of this, when people are in fear, obviously their immune systems go down.
Right.
But also when we see things that are blasted all over the media and we're then focused on it, it then increases our belief that could happen to us. Right. So those beliefs act as a way of probability. So one of the worst things we can do is to go into fear, because that fear that we end up getting into ends up lowering our immune system. We release more cortisol. Our body becomes more acidic. Has many different levels to this. However, on the other side of that, I don't know if you've ever heard of this kind of story, but it's in one of Dr. Deepak Chopra's books. Mm-hmm. He talks about this story where there is this guy that went to a doctor that was told by a doctor, oh, you have some type of like horrible disease or cancer or something. Right. And what ended up happening is he went and he was told he had 30 days to live. He went home, made his affairs in order, and ended up dying like 3 weeks to a month later. They found out later that what they thought he had wasn't exactly what would have killed him. It was something completely different, something that he would have easily recovered from. And he died based on partially his belief, or mainly his belief about what he was told, because he was told by authority something, and then that ended up becoming his reality. So it's the belief many times that is just as powerful as some of these things, because there are also many people that have a strong belief that they just don't get sick. You know, I remember hearing even from people that aren't necessarily into the spiritual awakening information. I remember, I don't know if you know who Gary Vaynerchuk is.
Oh yes, of course.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He's more of a marketing business guy, but in one of his books, he said he read about this on a plane. He was on a plane one time. He read about how somebody decided they just wouldn't get sick, and then they never got sick again. So he just decided that for himself. Mm-hmm. And he hasn't been sick in like 5 years. He's not even into the spiritual awakening information necessarily. I mean, I don't know, but you don't have to be into this this works, I think, at different levels. So he just decided he'd never get sick again. He hasn't. I haven't been sick in so many years, like 5-6 years. And I think it's because I have this belief that just doesn't happen for me. I don't tell myself a story that I have to get allergies every year and all of this stuff. And because of that, that's my reality. And it's, I think that the belief is just as dangerous as the actual virus itself. So fueling that, I think, is something that gives it more power. Now, some of my perspectives on this, let me kind of forewarn it as well right now. Since 2012, I went through my awakening in 2012, and I became aware, there is like a conspiracy theory type phase many people will go through on the spiritual awakening journey. Right. Because you begin to realize that, like, okay, if I'm learning this now through going through meditation and stuff, why isn't this taught? am I just some special being for knowing this? And you eventually realize that there are people that know about this information, that know we're eternal spiritual beings, having temporary human experiences, that understand the collective consciousness and understand that there's a certain narrative within the collective consciousness, but you become aware of certain things. And what I did is I went through like a month of this back in 2012 where I started to understand it more, but it's a darker path because you realize that there's some dark things in the world.
Right.
And what I did is I got in, I realized it was there, I became aware of it, and then I got out because I didn't want to go down that whole conspiracy route.
Right.
However, in the back of my mind, I have understood that there's a certain, and this will sound conspiracy theory to people listening to this right now, and I understand, I encourage everyone to think for themselves. I encourage everyone to do their own research and to just go in with an open mind just to see what resonates. Right. And what I'm about to share with you is not fact, or I don't know if it is, but I'm sharing at it just from my perspective. So let me just preface that because I don't want people to think I'm telling people what to believe or I'm preaching. I'm not. This is just from my own research. I do this for a living. I'm extraordinarily passionate about it, studying this kind of stuff. Right. But the planet, and I'm sure in the Law of One, the Law of One talks a little bit about this as well.
Right.
But when the government, not even the government, it's behind the government. There's been a certain amount of control on the planet for a long period of time. And this control has leaked down from certain elite people, we could say. And this control has been a way where there's been a certain agenda that keeps people within a certain mind frame of information, within a certain structure, where what happens is then people are kind of within a certain bandwidth of information. If people are kept in fear, if people are kept believing they're only so powerful, if we're within a system that keeps people kind of on the hamster wheel, I believe that there's some type of intention to that at that level, which isn't necessarily a positive thing. And it's been like that for a long time. You know, even when I know you've been making videos on Dolores Cannon, and talking about the call that was put out, you know, about us destroying ourselves and stuff. And I also am a little bit biased with this because I have someone that I personally know that I've grown up with that has worked. I don't know if you've heard my stories about this, but I know someone that I've known my whole life that has been a part of like, I guess you could call underground facilities, and worked for things like that. And he's over 80 years old now. And he's started
in the underground space program, the secret space. Not that
kind
one?
of.
Okay.
Kind of. There's many. If you study like, there's many different underground facilities around the world. You know, a lot of this sounds conspiracy, but I think over the next year or two, I feel comfortable kind of sharing this now because I believe that in the next like couple of years, this is going to become like very obvious and like factual. But if you study people like Emery Smith from this, you know, he's David Wilcock and Corey Good. They're called whistleblowers, but there's something genuine to what they're saying, or they are so creative, more creative than J.K. Rowling or something with the stories that they're telling. It's one of the two. They're telling these very detailed stories of things they've experienced being in a secret space program for Corey Good, or something like Emery Smith, who was a doctor in these underground facilities that was involved with looking at the biology of different races and ET races. So this stuff sounds out there, but the more you look at the Law of One, and it talks a lot about stuff like this, and Law of One, it talks about how the government has had, or people behind the government, whatever, have had access to many different ET kind of spaceships and stuff. It's very interesting, but from piecing together everything, the thing that's very interesting, thanks bro, appreciate it. The thing that's interesting is that when it comes to all of this, there's things that begin to kind of piece into itself. You begin to see things, but in general, there's been a certain thing that's been into place for a long period of time of certain people that have had power. And what I believe is happening right now is the energy dynamics that's happening, whether it's in the Law of One terminology, we're moving from third density into fourth density. The energy structures that used to support itself are falling apart. The elite, whatever we call it, that have had certain situations maybe orchestrated, certain power dynamics in place, those are beginning to fall apart. And those falling apart, those people I think are losing their power right now as we speak. And I believe that this new fourth density energy that's coming through is about this new energy, and that new energy of fourth density is more about energy, passion, vibration, unity, consciousness, us coming together. And I believe that that's what's happening right now on the planet. Is the old structure is falling away. Some people that have had very negative sense of power, whether we're talking about some of the stuff that's been involved with Hollywood, whether we're being, some of this is considered conspiracy theory, but it's stuff that's on the, I mean, you talk about Epstein, it's dark stuff.
You're right.
But it's not, this
Right.
isn't conspiracy anymore. And there's people that are involved with that have had a certain amount of power that I believe are beginning to lose their power. And there's many different things that are pointing to this, but I think that this whole quarantine situation we're in right now is part of it, but it's also allowing some things to happen to change around that energy dynamic. I believe that some people are going to have to become responsible for the kind of things that they've done behind the scenes. I think some of the people that we'll find that are involved with this are very shocking to us, because they're people that we've seen a certain way, that we figured were a certain way, that may actually have been sucked into kind of having darker intentions due to power. Right. And there's been, the collective consciousness has been used in a way and hijacked by people that understand that if you can get a mass amount of people to focus in a certain way, it can fuel a certain reality. Right. But what's happening now is I think that's starting to fall apart, and the people are starting to take back that power. So when we talk about the financial system, I believe that that's going to have a complete revamp. Yeah. Money hasn't been backed by gold since the 1980s. Right. That's a fact. Like some of this, right. I'm sharing this just from my perspective and from the research that I've done. But the way things have been going, just integrity as well. The new energy is about integrity. The new energy is about oneness, win-win scenarios. It's about us doing what we're really passionate about, creating scenarios where more people can win, and just having the system set up more for the people. So I know kind of what I'm sharing right now is a little bit more esoteric maybe, but it's what I genuinely feel is happening right now. I think the old systems are falling away. There's new systems coming in, and just exactly like you said, this is spawning and having people look inside of themselves. And I was listening to a thing last night of Eckhart Tolle. He's like, I've never known somebody that goes through a spiritual awakening through their comfort zone. We're being forced into the unknown. We're being forced into these territories where we now have to look inside. We can't just turn on the sports anymore, because there's no sports on right now. Right. We can't just distract ourselves the way we used to. It's causing us to look inside. And I think that over the next a couple of years, even the next year, there's going to be a mass spiritual awakening that just continues to flood itself. It is going to turn into like a reality revolution, you could say. Exactly.
Well, that's my theory. I propose a theory in my podcast, in my book, that we are experiencing this reality revolution. We're seeing our thoughts become reality faster. So say you go back to 1990 and you really went through, visualize something. Maybe it takes 6 months to a year. And now it takes a week or a month
or less. Yeah.
Everything is much faster for everybody, even people that don't know it. So what's happening is all these people's fears are becoming manifest. We see crazy stuff on the news all the time. Yep. And a lot of that is that people don't have any control over their mind, and their fears are running rampant. People are using them against it. And so I see, we question what's going on in the world. There's all this crazy stuff happening. Well, it's because our fears are being manifested faster as well. So we really have a choice right now. It's a choice between fear and creativity and love right now. And people are going to become aware of it. Right now, they don't have any idea they're doing it. So I think that what we're teaching is important. When people, you go and look at what's happened in the Me Too movement. I think that's part of it. People becoming more conscious of their actions and the way that people respond. All of these things that we see. And so I think that you feel the same thing too, that it's more than just us teaching this, that there's something happening, and we're seeing it every single day. It's a little bit faster, and it may feel uncomfortable, but it feels like it's going to be something great. It really does. It feels like we're moving.
I agree. And even as I share a lot of what I just shared, it may seem kind of, may seem a little bit out there. It may not resonate with everyone, but it's actually a very, very positive thing. What I believe is happening right now, even though I wish it didn't have to be so negative with the, people dying and getting infected with the stuff. I wish it didn't have to be that way. But there is a positive side effect of people becoming more aware and kind of going beyond the mind, going beyond the fear, going beyond the ego. And, even when something like 9/11 happened, initially it was very shocking. It was very sad, but it did bring people together.
Right.
It did bring people to more of a sense of community. People, if you saw someone hurt on the street, it was like people, no matter the race, no matter the ethnicity, no matter the culture, no matter the religion, people were more willing to help because you then became aware, we're both human and we're in a similar position, we're in this position and we need to link together. So I think that that's one positive side effect of what's happening. But I think that just in general, with this whole kind of breakdown of old system, I think it's extraordinarily positive. And I think like Law of One has stated, like Dolores Cannon has talked about, I think that this is the most exciting time to be alive ever on the history of our planet. I believe that this is a time of transformation. And there's so much attention here right now from many different levels of consciousness because there's such a mass amount of people that are we're doing this in body. Like some people think ascension means like you leave your body and you become like some ascended light being or something. We're in our bodies transforming from a third density reality into fourth density reality. Right. The third density is that sense of control. It's the sense of identity with the ego. It's this, that control that's been on the planet has been a part of that paradigm. The fourth density is about vibration, unity, consciousness, connection. And that's why time appears to be going by faster because our vibration is increasing. And as our vibration increases, it's like things just happen easier. Now, of course, time is an illusion anyways. Time doesn't really exist. Right. But our perception of time is going by quicker because we are individually going through a transformation. So it's very cool to see. And this is this collective shift that's happening right now is manifesting and purging. Think of it like, I don't know if you've ever done anything like plant medicine or anything like that, but there's like something like ayahuasca or plant medicine. There's this thing that's been, it's been around for thousands of years, but when people go through that, they take the medicine and what it does is it makes them purge. It makes them purge out the subconscious things that have been stored since maybe childhood. And it can be somewhat fearful. It can be somewhat uncomfortable, but once you become aware of it and you let it go, you then feel free and you feel light. Well, right now what's happening, we collectively are going through a purge, and this purge is fear. This purge is low vibrational energy that doesn't serve anymore. It's being brought to the surface for us to look at, for us to integrate and then let it go. So it's like there's a purpose behind it. But once we do let it go, I think that then we'll raise even more. We'll raise even higher. We'll feel even higher vibration. And I think that even though there's a lot of fear in the world right now, I think that there's still a higher vibration here right now. And in a way, there's different timelines going on as well, I think. I think there's these really negative timelines, there's these positive timelines, and we're literally shifting between them. And the key is for us to remain in a positive timeline. I'm explaining some of these things. I believe it's positive, but the key is, like I said, when I went through 2012 and I went through my awakening, I didn't stay in that month of learning about, how reality may be different than what we think because it was having a negative effect on my consciousness.
There's an energy to it.
It's very heavy.
That will bring you along to something else. Yeah. I mean, people talk about the new earth. Maybe the new earth is just two different timelines.
I agree. Negative, 100%.
So it's all our choice. We're not chosen. We want to choose that positive timeline. The earth is always constantly splitting into parallel realities, but you're right. We're given a choice that's very, very stark. So I'd like to ask a little more about Law of One. It's fun to sit and ponder what the fourth density being is. Of course you read the Law of One and you kind of understand, but it's fun to imagine. So it's a higher evolved being that is your understanding, or is it a human type of body, or is it the planet when it's all fourth density? What do you visualize people are going to be like when we move into that higher fourth density? What is it in your mind?
In my mind, the way that I think about it, the way that I relate to it is it's still there. You'll come across different teachings and different interpretations of it. Some people will say that it's like a completely new body where it's like a new energy form. I believe that what's happening right now on the planet and with us is our bodies are going from a more carbon-based body to what's called a crystalline body, which means that we're able to hold a higher vibrational energy. I believe that it's not going to be very different from what we see right now. I don't think it's going to be like some rapture thing or something where then we're in just like some, you know, like clouds. I don't think it's going to be like that. I think that it's more of an energetic thing. And fourth density is more about the energy of us living in the moment, realizing like every moment's a new moment. Every moment's a new moment. Every moment's a new moment. Who are we deciding to be? It's us knowing that and being present to the moment. And also reality becomes much more dreamlike. I believe that fourth density is more of a dream. I believe we're dreaming right now. I believe right now, you know, I've heard Bashar say this many times. I believe right now we are in spirit dreaming that this is who we are. And I believe that what happens in fourth density is we become more aware of that. And I believe that as we become more unity consciousness and connected to the collective consciousness, what happens is as our belief systems as a society change, it also changes the capabilities that we have as a collective consciousness. Like right now, we would consider some claircognizant, some clairvoyant abilities to be very special and to be very unique. But I believe that what happens is I think that's a natural effect that all of us will eventually have. And part of fourth density is having more of our pineal gland activated, being able to tap into different levels of consciousness, different levels of ourself, different versions of what we want to experience, understanding different levels of energy, different claircognizant, clairaudient, clairsentient abilities. And I think that these things that we think is so mystical become more natural. So I think that fourth density is something that happens in body. I think the point of this time is for us to be here right now and to go through this transformation. But it's really also a choice of energy. It's a very expansive, passionate energy that we're going to have the ability to be in. And in a way, when we talk about like the third, fourth density split that's happening that Dolores Cannon talks about, that's talked about in the Law of One, the way that I view it is it's all happening right now. And what happens is you can, in a way, look through and see like a glass wall that separates us from some of the different stuff that's happening. We may look out and see the fear that's happening in the world, but in a way, it's like we're looking through glass and we can choose to be a part of it or we can observe it. So we have this observational ability of this neutral 0 point of where we can observe it. So we can choose whether we engage with it and whether we get, you know, sucked into it or we can observe it. But it's like that will be happening for a while between this third, fourth density. So I think that as time goes on, we're going to be in a certain frequency where we will experience, the more we fine tune our vibration, less and less of what we don't want, but they're going to overlay for a while. So it's not like we're just going to all ascend into some higher state to where we don't ever experience anything negative whatsoever. I think that we'll still have the opportunity to jump back and forth. And when Dolores Cannon talks about the third to fifth density split or third, fifth dimension or whatever, when she talks about that, it's like, oh, these two earths. And it's like, how do you go from one to the other? It's like in everyday life, it's like you may go out and go out into you may go to like a grocery store and it's like this third density energy of fear, people trying to hoard all the toilet paper. That may be more of a third density energy. And if you resonate with it and you lower your vibe to it, then you may experience that. But then you may go back home and chill with your cat, your dog, or you may start meditating. You may be more in a 5 density or a fourth dimension state or a fourth density. I know those terms get kind of interchangeable, but I think that everyday activity, we are kind of going back and forth already. But as time goes on, we'll more so choose the fourth density and then realize we don't choose the third density anymore. We don't choose the duality, the polarity, the victimhoodness, the power dynamics, the negative stuff. We're just going to choose more of the fourth density. So I think it's in body. I think it's something that's one of the very exciting time to be alive. I think that more of these intuitive capabilities will come on board. I think as the collective consciousness changes, it'll become more common for people to tap into those states. So I think that it's just a natural part of evolution of what we're going through right now.
So the Ra is implying that, you know, Venus at some point just becomes it's all fourth density. It's overheats and the people they can't live there anymore. Maybe that's way down the road. It's hard to tell because Ra doesn't understand time. Ra's in a kind of a state where time is elastic, and he even says that. But it's fun to wrap your head around. It's very exciting to talk about. Something that you've talked about on a lot of episodes is the concept of the starseed. And it's funny because you and I being in the same circles, you get a lot of people that, oh, I'm a starseed. They just said that, and it becomes their identity. And it's kind of hilarious. It's this funny thing, like, oh, I'm from this planet, and like
I'm Arcturus.
Right.
I'm from Arcturus.
It's become like this hilarious thing that I continuously see, and so I wanted to talk about your perspective on it because there is something to it, but still at the same time, people have used and they're creating identities around it that maybe is not as productive. Maybe that's the best way.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it is. So when you go through a spiritual awakening as well, a very common thing is it's like the old ego goes out the door, and in the back door comes a spiritual ego.
The spiritual
and we become very spiritual, and like people don't, and many times people that go through a spiritual awakening will have people that don't understand them. So then when I went through my awakening, I tried explaining a lot of this to people. I got a lot of pushback, and I got a lot of friends that started kind of judging me and stuff. And then I felt misunderstood. And then I was like, well, you guys just don't get me. And then I developed a spiritual ego because I was like, you're still asleep. You don't get it. And it was like this negative spiritual ego that then I had to learn to get rid of. And part of that, though, is, once you start understanding the multidimensionality of reality, you start to understand I believe that every single person on the planet is multidimensional. Right. We all, we're eternal spiritual beings. The vastness of our beings, we can't even begin to comprehend. So to think that we've only ever incarnated on Earth is be such a limited viewpoint.
Right.
And to assume that Earth is the only thing ever in existence of is like so limited.
Infinity is a very long time.
It's a long time, and it's a long space,
Right, yeah.
But what happens sometimes is people start to become aware of the spiritual awakening and information. And then they start to learn about Pleiadians, Arcturus, Sirius. They start learning about these things, and it really, really resonates at a deep level. Well, as we start to open up to these new levels of consciousness that for so long we've been unaware of, we start to feel such a resonance there because there's more of that spirituality component. And then what happens is some people may say, a lot of these different star systems as too will be more connected to higher states. So let's say we're right now in third going into fourth density. One of the reasons I think many of us are here right now is we're going from third to fourth density. While we're going from third to fourth density, we have other parts of our own consciousness that are going from fifth to sixth density, sixth to seventh density. They're moving up an octave. So we, in a way, set part of our consciousness to go here for this shift in consciousness, while other parts of us go through this higher shift. Now, the thing is we came here to go through this shift in consciousness here in body. And the thing is people say, I'm an Arcturian starseed. I'm a Sirian starseed. We're of Earth. We're human. Mm-hmm. We have parallel incarnations. We could say our soul, our higher self, has other incarnations in other star systems. So what we're actually connecting to is a parallel version of us. Parallel version of us that may be in the Pleiades, may be Arcturian or whatever. Right. These are just the ones we know of as well. There may be way, way more that just aren't within our collective consciousness that we're aware of. But there's a certain agenda that's been here that's kind of talked about in the Law of One. And there's been an agenda, and part of the reason I think that Earth is here is Earth has to do with kind of like an experiment of evolving our, I guess, the human DNA in a certain way. And then what we do is, as eternal spiritual beings, we take on the physical avatar bodies of this reality, and we forget who we are. That's what makes the third density so challenging, is we forget who we are here. And we then have to go through the process of remembering. And right now on the planet, it's so powerful because we're going through the process of remembering. But in other systems and other places, we retain that memory. So when people feel such a resonance to certain star systems, they then may say, I am this, I am that. Well, you are you here. You have a parallel incarnation, a connection to these different star systems, and everybody on the planet does. So we can say, oh, I'm special because I'm a starseed, but everyone has this kind of connection. It's just that maybe it's not relevant for them to remember it in the way that you're remembering it.
Mm-hmm.
So how can you use that remembrance that you are connected to that and bring through maybe some of that information, maybe some of that energy, but at the same time, not get overly identified with it, where then you feel special. I'm special because I am a Syrian this or a Pleiadian this. Like, it then becomes something that kind of is overly emphasized, and that becomes an ego of itself, an identity in of itself. So sometimes in a way it becomes a little bit of taking us off the path of what we initially meant for it to be on.
Exactly. So I want to game plan this with you. It's fun to have you here because you have a fascination with parallel realities like I do.
Yeah, I know you do.
I've had experiences. So first of all, my question to you is, this is a theory I will propose. When you start intentionally trying to travel through parallel realities, like you do, you'll do something random in the middle of the day. You'll do different things. You'll do quantum jumps. You'll meditate. You see something that is an obvious reality shift that was not there before, an object, a person, something that, do you notice when you point it out and talk about it to everybody that the shifts kind of go away? Like when you keep it to yourself and don't make a big deal about it, like, or you see something crazy, just the more you kind of ignore the major reality shifts, the more you see of it. There's a part maybe of our higher self that doesn't want us to go insane, right? So it's purposely protecting us from major reality shifts. And so if I consciously, I see that I have a new cat, or I have a new lamp in my room, or there's a new building on the corner, I will not mention it to anybody. I'll just accept it, and this is just my new reality. And then you start to see more. Do you think there's some kind of outside dynamic that's limiting our travel through these parallel realities? Do you understand what I'm trying to ask?
I do. I think from one aspect of this, what happens is when you keep it to yourself and you see it just as a part of the way reality works,
right?
It's almost like there's not an increased amount of importance there. There's not that resistance.
Right.
Now, the other aspect of this is, I believe, when we sometimes tell people what's happening,
right,
it then activates sometimes resistance in them. Because then they're like, oh, come on, man, you're just thinking too much about this. Or it's almost like then it brings in their beliefs about it. But if you keep it to yourself, it's not dependent. When it's to yourself, it's energy that's kept within inside of you. It's a belief system that you're just living according to. But when you share it with other people, you then invite in their thoughts, their vibrations, their beliefs. And then that may limit it a little bit, because most people aren't necessarily open to this yet, this idea. Now, in actuality, if you study Bashar or, some of the parallel reality stuff, whether it's Frederick Dotson, I know you've talked to him before. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like every moment's a new moment. Every moment's a new moment. Right. So the greater degree of change it's almost like the more willing we are to let go of the current reality having to be a certain way, the current control over it and understanding it all, the more we let go of that, the more magical it becomes, the more flexible it becomes.
Right.
So a lot of this is just letting go of the structures, letting go of the importance, letting go of the resistance. And the more we let go of that, the more magical reality becomes. And that's when we're talking about fourth density as well, is reality becomes more dreamlike. Right. And it's like there's more greater degree of change that's able to happen. But I think that that's already at a certain level happening. And in a way, I think that our higher self may give us I've had some very obvious things happen that it's like, whoa, like what just happened? Like it was something very obvious that some parallel reality shift did happen. But I also, it's almost like I remember, my one of my good friends is Leora Alexandra. I don't know, you might know who she is.
Of course.
She's one of my best friends, but we were dating back in the day. We used to be in a relationship together. And when she was kind of going through the onset of some of her awakening, and she would oh my God, 1111, or like see certain numbers, kind of like get really, really excited about it. And sometimes I think she was like, why I just don't, not that I don't get excited about it, but it's just so everyday life for me. Like
it's common now.
Like, it's this time, it's that, it's this. I see that synchronicity, not just time, but other things. Like it's just so everyday reality. And the more it's so everyday reality, I think the more it just kind of happens.
Right.
So in a way, it's like, I think it'll just keep happening kind of like that. It's just
So
us. Yeah.
what do you think's happening? So there's a reality where I don't interview you, right? And there's a reality where I do interview you. There's always that other reality is an entire planet of people. Those are people that are also making their own reality. So is it like a clockwork? Are they all in, they're shifting into realities, but it's a similar reality. Do the realities stream together? There's this concept that if every reality is created by me, then everybody is a backdrop person almost, or they're in the exact same frequency. So I'm trying to game plan it out in my mind. If every decision and every action I make, there's a parallel reality. And Dolores Cannon kind of talks about it a little bit, but I wanted to get do you understand the question?
I do.
Yeah. What is everybody else making a decision that is similar just enough and the whole planet is in a reality that's similar, or am I in my own little valley of reality that I'm creating? And it's I'm trying to put it into,
I see what you're trying to say. I think the way that I view it is everything exists here and now. Everything exists here and now. So the reason people are connecting to, for example, different connections, different parallel incarnations of each other, is because it all exists here and now. Right. It's just different connections we're making. So when it comes to the physicalized reality that we're talking about, I think that when we talk about, are you creating it? Am I creating it? It depends upon the perspective, because at the grandest perspective, we are all one. We are all connected.
Right.
So it all exists here and now. Everything that would happen, can happen, it has happened. It's already happened from a certain perspective. And we're all just experiencing reality through a very unique viewpoint for the purpose of experience. But we're all one. We're all reflections of each other. Right. Now, the way that I view it is, in a way, as we make certain choices, as we vibrationally get into certain alignments, it's almost like gears that lock into place that then kind of put it onto a certain timeline. And we can still draw upon the information. We may look to past lives that maybe we think we've had. You can learn from those by connecting right now, because those lives are going on right now.
Right.
So timelines all exist. It's just data. It's just information. I don't know. You might be interested if you haven't checked him out already. Do you know who Thomas Campbell is?
I do a little bit. I haven't read too much, but
he talks about us living in he's a physicist who talks about, it's called the big theory of everything, a big toe theory of everything. And in it, he talks about how reality is a simulation. He was involved with the Monroe Institute. Have you heard of the Monroe Institute?
I haven't.
It's Robert Monroe was known for founding an institute where he would study out-of-body experiences. So what he would do is he would have scientists brought in to study this out-of-body experiences. And what they would do is he formulated a process for helping get people out of their body. And then what they would do is then go into out-of-body states and then learn information. And my grandpa actually told me about these tapes called the Gateway Experience, which are these tapes that you listen to that help get you into these, they're very powerful meditations that called hemi-sync technology that get you into being able to kind of explore different levels of your consciousness. But it has to do, but just to make a long story short, the reason I share all that is because from going out of body and going into these altered states of consciousness, you can kind of learn more about reality. And one thing that Thomas Campbell talks a lot about is how reality is a form of simulation. Just like these bodies are kind of avatars in this life experience that we're having. We're actually eternal spiritual beings dreaming that this is who we are right now. And we're much more vast. But that would be data and information. So these different realities, these different parallel realities are different data streams, different information streams that we can tap into. And if you're talking about it from transurfing, it would be more of the alternative space.
Right.
So it's all data and information, but what's important is what's been actualized right now. And I like knowing that there's data there, there's information there, because the way that I think about it too, when we talk about reality creation, is what if you could tap into that data stream and imagine that version of you, the version of you that's doing all this really, like something that you would want to be doing in a year from now or something, which is kind of what I do with YouTube, is I imagine the future version of me making daily, and I realized that future version of me was making daily videos on YouTube. And what I did is I just adopted that belief system, that version of me, the actions of that version of me, the being that way. And I actualized that in my current reality back in February 2017, and that became my reality within 5 to 6 months. So we can, in a way, using that data stream, connect to future versions of us. And what we can then do is learn from it, take on the energy, take on the information, and see how we can then use that. So in the same way, all these different parallel realities is a data stream of information that any of us can tap into. And if we want, we can reverse engineer it. And the way we reverse engineer it is through, like Neville Goddard would talk about, imagination.
Right.
So it's this imagination data stream. So they all exist, but this is, I believe that in a way, this experience feels real, but this is a form of an illusion. We're just actualizing this illusion from our current vantage point. But all those, the reality where you and I didn't do this interview, it still exists right now, and we can pull information from that reality. But it still has a reality in of itself. But I think the physicalness of it is an illusion anyways from a certain perspective. It's just vibrational sense perception. So it's also data and information. So that's kind of my viewpoint.
Yeah, I like that. I resonate with that, as you like to say.
Cool.
The thing that I've always wondered, you start to go through this process, do quantum jump, parallel reality surfing, all that stuff. There's always that feeling in the back of your mind, I'm missing out on something. I could have this incredible reality, but I just don't know about it. Like I could have this reality over here that I just missed, that I'm a billionaire. Maybe I just it doesn't even come to my mind. Is there a way, we can imagine stuff. We can imagine stuff in our imagination, but is there a way to access realities that we have not imagined? That's the thing. Sometimes I wonder, we're in this little reality that we have where we're, there may be a reality where it's so much better.
Yeah.
I wish there was a way for us to know those realities. I mean, maybe it's a form of meditation or
maybe it's stretching the imagination more. I think a lot of us don't really use the full capability of our imagination.
Right.
But if we did, it's almost like we're experiencing what is relevant for us on our spiritual journey right now.
Right.
So yes, there are realities that exist that are probably beyond what we could even possibly imagine, but there's something to learn from where we are right now. And even with yes, I'm sure there's a reality where the whole virus thing didn't happen and all this other stuff. But I think that what's relevant right now is for us to go through and for us to transform this dark into light and all of this stuff. But if we want to experience more of the unknown of things like there's what we know, there's what we don't know, and then there's what we don't know, we don't know. You know what I mean? There's this whole bigger slice of the pie of what we don't know because we're just completely not aware of it.
Right.
I know. Yeah, go ahead.
No, yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I don't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, just in general, I know how to make videos on YouTube. I don't know aerospace engineering.
Right.
But I don't know stuff that doesn't even exist. But I guess it's just what is relevant right now and using my imagination or learning more stuff. The more we learn, the more awareness we have, the more then we can go down those roads,
Absolutely. So it's just, I keep on coming back to this book I just read, The Case Against Reality by Donald Hoffman. And he makes the argument that we're just, as average, we're just like an icon in a computer, and all of our senses are just energy detectors. We think that this is a conscious experience for every living being in the universe, but there may be living beings that hear smells, that smell sounds. We just know this is the reality that we know, and it's very limited, only at 5 different energies that we're detecting. And it's just this little tiny cave that we're looking out at the light.
I agree. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, and the light is going to be, there's so many more, and we could have more senses, but we chose to be in this little cave. Just barely aware of what's going on for many reasons, obviously. So, go ahead.
You would like Thomas Campbell then?
Yeah. I'll definitely. I'm putting it down. I'll definitely check that out for sure.
Check out some of his stuff. It's very in alignment with what you're talking about right now. I mean, he pretty much says that he's a very he's a very smart guy, and he's a physicist, But yeah, he talks about kind of the same thing. Like it's kind of like, the movie The Matrix as far of a cinematic way of thinking about it. But what is sensation? It's interpretation of vibration, right? Like,
right.
And as we go into more of the fourth density state, it's almost like that's expanded to where then it's beyond just the five senses. There's a third eye, clairvoyant, different capabilities. Exactly.
We're just getting an advanced vehicle to maneuver,
Yes.
right? So
yes.
You and I also share a huge love for Tony Robbins. Love Tony Robbins so much.
Yep.
I think he's like an advanced teacher like Neville Goddard. He teaches states. I followed you when you went to you recently checked him out. I just wanted to get your perspective. I have this idea, and I'll bounce it off you. Open source spirituality. Everybody, one person will take this one theory and it's their ism and they live by that one thing, one thing over here. I think that if we collect them all together, like open source, we got a little bit of the transurfing over here. We got a little bit of Neville Goddard, we got a little bit of Tony Robbins. That's kind of what we're moving towards, this open source, all of this stuff. And Tony Robbins has a lot to offer, but he's not the mystical teacher. He's really teaching real world techniques.
Practicality.
And I wanted to get your perspective. Since you've done that, you've been able to control your emotional states like I did after his seminar. It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. It's state of being, how much state of being goes into emotion, goes into behaviors. It's very powerful. And when you go to like a Tony Robbins conference, he is compiling a lot of different information together.
Right.
When we went, it was very interesting for me to go because I've loved Tony Robbins stuff. I've never been to any of his higher end things like that. It was my first one. I went to Date with Destiny, which is like the one that was in that movie, I'm Not Your Guru.
Right.
And he teaches spiral dynamics. I don't know if you've studied spiral dynamics. He teaches that. He teaches Ho'oponopono. Something I've been teaching for like a year or two now. It's ancient Hawaiian technique. It's been around a long time. That was a very center point thing of it, But it is in a way a big, what his teachings are, he has made NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, a very common, understandable, practical thing.
Right.
So he teaches people basically how to use NLP using their state. And it's like his one thing, like the one thing that he is known for is that state, he teaches a million different things, but he's known for that state, even you were just mentioning the state.
Right.
So I think, and I agree with you as well. I think that the time we're moving into, I've made like 1,500 videos on YouTube. I know you've made a whole bunch of content. And the challenge for me sometimes is always trying to create new stuff, always trying to not be repetitive, and it's almost impossible for me not to be repetitive having 1,500 YouTube. And I know some of my content
but there's always layers, right? So
there's layers, there's depth to it. Repetition sometimes is powerful, but yeah, I think the time we're moving into is like an open source, connecting all these ideas together. It's such a funny thing to me because, I've experienced it as well, where maybe some people, what I do is I look at all this different research and I take certain things that resonate with me and I kind of not make it my own, because no one owns these information. No one owns it.
But it's like you're cooking in the kitchen and you're just picking different ingredients.
Right. And then finding a way of concocting it that resonates with people. And where we're moving into, I think, is where it's just more of that openness, where that's acceptable as well. And there's less attachment, because some people are like, oh, this is my perspective. I made this perspective. I made this book. Like, don't talk about it. It's like, well, I'm sharing these ideas that so it's kind of like this perspective of nobody really owns these ideas. Right. We're all one. So we can own a patent to something and say, oh, but have you ever heard of where many people around the world will get the same patent idea at the same exact time? Well, that's my idea. And then somebody will go to a store one day and say, that was my idea to have that thing at Bed Bath & Beyond, Yeah. Well, these ideas are everywhere. We are just literally antennas that are picking up on different data streams. So what happens is we, especially what you and I do, we get information, we tune ourselves to different information and then formulate it in a way that resonates with people. And the challenge is then sometimes is doing this in a way that resonates with people, also in a way that's authentic, that doesn't, because some people are egoically attached to their perspectives. That's my perspective. It needs to be done in this way. and it needs to be explained in this way. But at the greater level, we're all connected. We're all one. So yes, that is you, but do you realize that at a deeper level, you and I are one?
Right.
So it's about also kind of, I think that we're moving in a time when that's more acceptable. I've had to check myself even, because as I started to grow on YouTube, there were certain other YouTube creators that I would see that would then like remake some of my videos in the same exact keywords, the same exact thumbnails, everything. And I would get I would feel in a way that then I was competing with more people, I was in this competition, like it would trigger my ego, you know, because even though I am taking other information, I'm making it in a way my own perspective, or I'm formulating it in this way. So when somebody uses these same exact titles, these same exact thumbnails,
well, I have to apologize. I think a couple of times I might have said, I want to expand your.
No. You have nothing to worry about, bro.
I think I might have said that on accident. So
don't worry about it. I'm not saying this to you. Like you are very much.
You know what I'm saying.
I do. But I didn't say that. So. And I'm sharing this, the reason I said all that is I've had to check myself and realize that even though this is stuff that, bro, this is back in 2017, I went through this.
Right, yeah.
So when I started and
I've
people
gone
started
through it too. I've had the same people copying my stuff, and then I've been like, that's not mine. That's stuff that
Exactly. And the side effect of that is that then it's actually helping more people.
Exactly.
So if we take it out from the little ego that feels threatened, because it's like, oh, well, I made all those videos, because the way that my ego felt at the time was like, oh, I've been making daily videos for this number of time. What I felt was happening from the ego's perspective is some people were finding out which videos were doing well and then just modeling the exact formula, the exact thing. And then I was like, well, I'm like the guinea pig for what's working. And then everyone else just kind of like models that. But what's the worst than that though? What would be worse than that is if nothing was working at all and that the message wasn't getting out there at all. But on the other side of that, at the deeper level, once I became aware of that ego structure, I became aware that this message is reaching way more people by this actually happening.
Yeah.
Plus, these aren't even my only, these ideas belong to the collective consciousness. And if it's helping you to awaken more people. So while I may have got frustrated and felt very human about it back in 2017, 2018, when I was first going through that, I had to keep letting go of it and realizing I'm just an antenna for this information. We're just antennas for it. We're picking up on it. We're repackaging it and showing it in a way that resonates with people, but it's not actually ours. So this open source thing is the reason I share that, that's kind of stuff I don't really share very often, but that's something I went through. That was something that I had to really learn to let go of. And I really had to become aware of my own ego, and ego wants to survive. The ego likes to try to control things. And it's like me and you and the separation. That's the old 3D mentality. That's the old 3D perspective of that. And we're letting that go now, and we're moving more into that open source, exactly like you're talking about. And we're doing it in our own ways, and we're on antennas for it. But even the information I speak about, I don't own it. I am just an antenna. The only way I'd be able to do 1,500 videos every single day for four years straight is by getting into a flow state and allowing it to flow through. So
it's not worrying about, well, maybe this is, you're teaching it from your heart. That's what
heart, exactly.
Resonate from it.
Exactly. And the heart doesn't try to control. The heart doesn't try to, oh, you shouldn't be speaking about, it's not like that. That's the ego, so we're moving into that time. And I want to applaud you because you're doing a great job at doing that, of being that antenna and sharing these ideas with people. And
thanks, man.
Yeah, just wanted to express that as well, because
possibility. You had said something earlier that what if everything is true, even if they contradict? What if every truth is? If you believe it's true, I mean, I think that we could live in a universe where things can contradict. That is a mind blowing thing. You kind of mentioned that too.
Yeah. Absolutely.
If true, then you got to pick your truth, right?
I believe that all truths are true for you, for the person.
Right.
So when you and I did debate, for example, we could see that from the positive perspective, there's evidence that supports this. And then you find actual research and evidence that you state in the debate that supports it. And then you do the same for the negative. You have both affirmative and negative. Both truths are true from that level of consciousness, from that perspective.
Right.
Now, the thing we get tied up on is we think that our reality has to link up with everyone else's, and then we argue about it. So the thing is all truths are true. You will find evidence for whatever you go out and look for.
Exactly.
This is when I talk about, it's a very controversial thing, but the flat earth theory, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the thing that happens is we get some people that have a certain belief and that they want other people to believe it too. So that's where the clash happens. That's where the resistance happens.
Mm-hmm.
Now, from different perspectives, if you were to go online right now and look for evidence that the flat earth is a thing, you will find people that believe it. You will find forums that believe it. You will find videos that give you evidence of it. And you could then be a part of that belief.
Right.
But there's also the opposite of that. So the way that I describe it is, this is my own belief system. So I'm not neglecting someone else that, has more proof of more of a belief that that there's a flat earth. I believe if you go outside right now, the earth appears to be flat. Okay. So yes, the earth is flat from a certain perspective. If you were to expand the scope out, I believe that the reality that we live in through looking at like the law of one, for example, is there's these different logos, there's these different kind of symbols of microcosm, macrocosm, and that we could say it's like a spherish pear, whatever shape it is, whatever it is. Right. I think that could be a certain perspective. However, I also think reality is a form of simulation. So because of that, from the certain perspective of the person that's the flat earth person, I see how that could also be true for them, because it is in a form, an interpretation of data. And from a certain perspective, I see how that could be the case. That could be rationalized. So I'm not saying the flat earth people are wrong. I'm not saying they're right. I'm saying that that's true for them, and that if they go online, they will find more people that believe in it. And that I'm sharing this analogy, even though it's very controversial, because people that believe in it are very passionate about it. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying it's true for that person. The only time we experience the pain is when we assert that what's true for you has to be true for me.
Has to be true for me.
When in actuality, I think that all truths are true and will be reflected back to us based on our own belief system. And the key to this is just finding out what works for us. Right. And that's what you and I think, are doing. We're kind of showing these different belief systems, these different ways of understanding how reality
will work for you.
Exactly.
Right. Go ahead. So you talked, you brought up the logos, and I'm fascinated by that. It's really exciting to think about. Do you think that we are moving towards a point where we become a logos on a higher scale? Like we become suns, we become galaxies, we create universes. Do you think that's possible? I mean, of course, all truths are true, but wouldn't that, it seems like we're moving up levels.
Yep.
Levels. And that seems like another level of consciousness.
It is. Yeah. So like everything exists here and now.
Right.
I think that from our perspective right now, we are moving from third density to fourth density. Mm-hmm. However, I think that right now we are also connected to that sun logos, the earth is a being as well. The earth is we are the cells on Mother Gaia, and what's happening right now is as Mother Gaia changes, we're changing as well, because we're connected.
Right.
I think that yes, and that exists right now. I think that it's already happened. It's just that
so the logos is us right now. The higher self could be the
exactly.
Let's talk about the higher self then. Do you think the higher self, according to Ra, the higher self is goes back in time and is there for us? So the higher self is already this advanced form way in the future, but it also goes back in time. How do you view your higher self?
I think I think of our higher self as always guiding us. It's always helping us to connect to different reality probabilities in a way. I think when we go to bed at night, we're awake to these higher states of consciousness. We're dialoguing with what we could call our spiritual guides or our higher self. And then what happens is there's certain probabilities that when we wake up, we then go through different experiences of different things we have free will with, but it's kind of orchestrates certain experiences in a way. And sometimes there'll be bad things that happen. We won't understand the larger picture, but in a way, it's in a way, things that help get us where we need to be when we need to be there. Our higher self is something that we're all connected to. That, what does Ra say? Is it sixth density? Our higher self is sixth density?
Our higher self is is late sixth density.
Yes. Okay.
Late sixth density. Seventh density is the next step. Ra is a sixth density, right? So
yes.
Ra is.
So I think. So in some ways, when you look at Ra, which have you ever looked at like cosmic disclosure?
I have watched the Cosmic Disclosure. My only thing about David Wilcock, I love David Wilcock, but it's just like something happened with David Wilcock, and he changed or became, But I love the early Cosmic Disclosures because it's totally,
like the first couple seasons.
Seasons are really interesting.
What they talk a lot about in the first couple seasons of which is Corey Good,
right?
Who it's a whole story in of itself. But what they say is that the raw beans, the raw materials were made from the same consciousness that was giving the information to Corey.
Right.
The Blue Avians or whatever. So it's very interesting because it aligns also with what's taught about how the ancient pyramids were built and all of that,
right.
But in a way, I think that there are people here today that have these future incarnations at maybe that level of consciousness, but they're here right now to go through this shift in consciousness because they're karmically tied here. The raw materials, they've explained it in the raw materials, they're karmically tied to us. That's why they're giving us that information so that they can then break free,
Right. My cat wants to.
That's cool. Have a little showtime. I like that.
Right. He wants to get on camera there. So, but, we were talking about the, with going into what do you think happens at the 7th density? They're talking about Saturn being 7th, 8th density. Do you think it's just another step, or we just don't know, or we can't contemplate that? Or
I think it's really hard to contemplate, to be honest, from our limited ego perspective, because
it's fun to contemplate, but
it is. Yeah. I think it's like it's like these higher selves merge to become one unity consciousness,
like a unity social memory complex consciousness. But you think it's all one, or do you think that it moving towards one? I don't know. That's
the thing. That's why I say it's hard to understand. Like,
right.
I think it could be that, it could be both. It could be we merge so much together that we lose our sense of self, which sounds scary to our egos right now. But from a larger perspective, if we're all one consciousness, maybe that is the sun consciousness or something like that. I don't know, but I do find it. I do find it interesting.
Well, I want to thank you for spending this time with me. It's been a genuine pleasure. One of the coolest things ever. So nice to meet you.
Thank you, man.
When you come to Orange County, please, I'll
let you know, man. We'll go to
definitely come on by, and I'll take you to some great meals here. So, and everybody check out Aaron's. If you don't know Aaron's channel, then I don't know where you've been. You're in for a huge treasure. There's so many great videos, so many great teachings, and it's been really fun to follow you on a day-by-day basis and see you grow and become the Aaron Doughty that you are now. So
thank you.
And thank you. I mean, I'm serious. You've made my life better, and I have more cool things in my life and better understandings because of you. And I want to thank you for that, because I appreciate that. My life there's a lot of stuff I wouldn't know or think about. You brought perspectives.
Thank you.
And man, I appreciate it. It means a lot. So
thank you, man. I love what you're doing. Listening to your podcast. I've been listening to it for a while. I go through those spurts where I'll put it in when I'm going for a run or something like that. I could tell we were in the same mindset. The podcast that I have is listening to your podcast and how often you do it. It's kind of inspired me to go a little more frequent. I've been putting more of my energy into my podcast now more than ever, so it is something that I think, it just kind of comes around, you know what I mean? So I'm happy to have added value, and I'm happy to thank you for the value that you add to everyone and everything you're doing as well. So
Aaron, have an awesome one and enjoy yourself. Stay safe, which you will, of course. And thank you. Welcome to the Reality Revolution.
Thank you, brother.
Welcome to the Reality Revolution. Unlimited possibilities. Dedicated to the spirits who believe life is meant to be magical. Check it out. He has some really good meditations, and you discuss. It contains advanced viewpoints of the multidimensional human beings of the 21st century. I'm your host, Brian Scott. Sometimes you need to go back. We were able to visualize with exploring stuff that's fun to explore. I can tell. Unleash your potential. Some topics on how to change the subconscious mind and some I'm your host, Brian Scott.